Hey everybody, this is Mike Maniscalco with IHEG. Today we are doing a joint webinar with CompTIA on Quick Start to Managed Services. And the idea is to give audio-video integrators and IT VARs who are interested in getting into managed services a little roadmap and some new things to think about based on what the IT industry has been doing over the years. So we've got a CompTIA panelist with us today. Terry will be leading you through the webinar today, so I'm going to turn it over to him and let him kind of walk through things.
Great, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here today. My name is Terry Hedden. I'm the founder and CEO of two companies right now. One's called Cloud Guru, and another one's called Marketopia.com. Marketopia will be launching in a couple of weeks. But my background is actually as a managed service provider. I started with a very limited amount of capital and built one of the largest managed services companies in the United States before selling out in 2012. Now I do exactly this. I give back to the community and help people grow their businesses, especially around the managed IT services and cloud space. I say this because you'll find that I'll infuse industry experience in there. I'm not, a typical, I guess, instructor in the sense that I've actually done this. I built this presentation based on my experience, so I'll try to incorporate as much as I can to add as much value as I can. A little commercial for CompTIA. Many people don't realize that CompTIA is much more than a provider of A+ and Net+ certifications. It's a great organization that has a lot of education that it gives away for free. If you go to their website, you can actually become a type of member now of CompTIA that doesn't have a monthly expense, yet gives you a lot of the knowledge that the paid customers get, including training just like this. So don't hesitate to reach out there. Highly recommend it. One of those surprise things when I started working with them as I realized just how much they do for free. It's a great organization, so I'd encourage you to take a look. So today we're going to talk a little bit about getting into the managed services space. I know a lot of you guys are IT resellers or audiovisual companies that are looking to enter the managed services space. It's not a simple business transition. A lot of people have tried and had varying levels of success, from people who have abandoned the effort and gone back to those that have really done well with it and created something special. So I'm going to do my best to make sure you're in the latter group. And to do that, we're going to talk about five different things that you can do to help make sure that the transition to selling managed services is successful. Customer collaboration, creating the right team, understanding how to partner for success, understand a little bit more about the industry pricing models, and then how you invest in growth. Managed services is one of those things that all customers are actually looking for, but few realize what they are asking for, in the sense that if you're an audiovisual company, they trust you to provide services for them now in that space, but at the end of the day, everyone would love to have a one-source partner for all things technical. Let's face it, audiovisual is computer network engineering in a lot of ways. It's not that different, and in fact, there's a lot of integration between the two. So customers would love to offer managed services. So I would encourage you to look out to your customers and understand more about not just what services that they are looking for you, but that you know about, but maybe things you don't realize that they're looking for. So use your customers as a sounding board, and then create opportunities, conduits for feedback. So many people come in, quote on what was asked, and then leave the project when it's completed without taking the time to explore opportunities for more involvement. For firms like that, it really helps to create advisory boards, user groups, where you really, I guess, gain input from your customers, understand what they're looking for from you. With managed services, it's unique in the sense that no one says, I'm looking for, or I say no one, but very, very seldom do you actually get a customer calling you saying, I'd like to buy managed services. But all of them would like peace of mind associated with knowing that their IT is monitored, that preventative maintenance is occurring, and that they are protected from unexpected bills and unwanted viruses, malware, and attacks, things like that. So ask what they're looking for, and be aware that what they actually want may not be what they're asking for. Something that I found worked extremely well was customer surveys. Take them seriously. I actually hired an external firm to do this. I found that email requests to provide a survey response were very, let's just say, not very well received, not very well responded to, and it was of useless value. But if you actually do it maybe every 6 months, outsource the actual personalized calling of the survey, you'll find you'll get a much much more accurate response because you'll have a higher hit rate. In other words, instead of an email survey that might generate 0% to 20% response rate, a phone survey can get easily north of 50, so you get a better representative sample of the market. The downside, of course, is that it's expensive and it can't really be done by internal staff. If the business owner or a service technician or maybe someone who they've worked with in the past calls and asks how they're doing, by default they're going to say great. They're not going to want to air their dirty laundry, especially if they know that they have to work with you in the future. They don't want to burn a bridge that they may or may not need to transport them at a later date. Another thing is a constant survey. It's another thing that works, which is some ticketing systems for service tickets. For example, in this industry, the two biggest providers of this would be ConnectWise and AutoTask. They have built-in customer surveys built into the ticketing system. So once every 30 days, when you call in, you'll get a response automatically saying, how did we do? How did we do on this particular survey? It's nice because you get specific feedback on specific tickets. So you don't have to wonder which ticket they were working on or what engineer they're talking about. You actually know exactly who they're working on. The other benefit is that it's immediate. The downside is that over time, people become numb to these. Surveys and fail to respond as accurately as maybe they did originally. Creating the right team is actually somewhat challenging for a lot of people who are coming from a break-fix or a project-oriented model. Like most IT resellers that are not in managed services, they have more of a traditional sales model that's worked very effectively for them. They come in, they develop a quick rapport with a customer, they have a very likable salesperson. That salesperson basically wins the deal. Sometimes they compete on price, sometimes they compete on what I would say is a relationship, but in general, they buy from people they like. The right team at a managed service includes the customer, the engineers or partners, and we'll get into that in a minute, account management, mid-management, and executive leadership. Most organizational charts look like this, where the CEO is at the top, you then have mid-management, you then have account management with some sort of reporting relationship from the engineers and partners, and customers are at the bottom. In other words, the interface between the customers is at the engineer and partner level. In managed services, it really helps to think of it completely opposite. We are a service-oriented industry in the sense that the customers make a long-term business relationship commitment to us, and we think of ourselves as basically providing a fixed, guaranteed service on a daily, weekly, monthly, annual basis for a predefined metric. Once that sale is made, we all then effectively report to the customer. When you outsource IT, which is another name for managed IT services, in effect, you're basically like an employee of that firm. You may or may not be on site, but customarily you're there. So it's important to act as an organization as though you're an employee. Obviously, you'll have the pricing benefits of being a third party. You won't have maybe some of the HR or administrative issues associated with your customers. But at the end of the day, everyone reports into the customer. And I actually create an org chart in my organization that looks just like this. In other words, the CEO's job is to serve and enable and empower and motivate mid-management, which is then motivated to do the same for account management, engineers, and at the end of the day, the customers are the most loved and cared for people in the business. That is the way to build a managed services practice because it's all about retention of customer. We had over $250,000 a month in managed services revenue on a 5-year commit, 3- and 5-year commitments. And the reason is because we had a 97% retention when our contracts do expire, but we also had long-term contracts with our customers, 3- and 5-year contracts to ensure that the opportunity for a renewal is very infrequent. In terms of creating the right team, it's important to realize that managed services is a 24/7 business. Just had a conversation with an old friend today and just talked about how hard it is. Don't underestimate how difficult managed services is. You are held accountable for a result, not an effort. So in a traditional environment, you're paid by the hour, or maybe you're paid by the project, but you're pretty much in control of all the variables. In managed services, the variable is the end user and the climate. In other words, the lightning storm, power outages, email outages, internet outages. It could be many, many things, but they don't stop. So we have an issue after hours. we simply take care of that. We simply provide the 24/7 support, and we do that by providing a very broad reach of talent. And this is where some of the ways that VARs and AV providers may have a huge advantage, in the sense that they aren't built by a bunch of subject matter experts, a bunch of level 3 engineers. In a managed service environment, you have to make sure that you have a diverse group of talent, and that's for 2 reasons. One, obviously, you're responsible for results, so you never know what's going to come up. So it's important not to have all of your eggs in one basket. It's important to have some dilution of responsibility, but also it's important to have sheer horsepower. We mentioned before how managed services is a 24/7 business. For each subject matter expert, you may pay them $50,000 to $150,000 a year, where you can get a general desktop engineer or maybe a jack of all trades for a fraction of that amount. So in a lot of sense, you may be better off to have 2 or 3 lower-level resources for each subject matter expert. And you want to make sure that you have a system for tracking your tickets and your process that ensures that the best resources are on the job. For the lower-level tasks, those would be done by the entry-level people. The complex tasks are done by high-end engineers. It's also very important to invest in continual training for employees. Someone recently told me that they were asking, well, why would I invest in someone who may quit? In other words, why would I spend $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, maybe even $10,000 to get them a valuable certification from VMware or something like that, and then only for them to leave? And that person then responded, how scary would it be to have a team that doesn't leave and doesn't get trained? So you're in a quandary. The key is to have a continual training for your employees. Make sure you provide opportunities for cross-training. Make sure you have self-study for certifications. That's something that I really learned in terms of a valuable lesson. If you spend a lot of money for people to go to a training class, go on a boondoggle to another city, get certified, there's no additional loyalty, in fact, that you gain from doing so. We provided an online training curriculum for all engineers that allowed us to really say that we invested in them. We gave them an online subscription to 1 billion different training classes that allow them to do it on a self-study basis, which lowered the cost for us, but also the cost for them. If we sent someone off for a training class, we asked for a commitment where if they left within a certain amount of time, usually 1 to 2 years, they would have to repay that expense. Whereas an online self-study situation, the only thing the firm provided and asked them to guarantee was the certification test themselves. The biggest thing is that it created some ownership and some sense of ownership over the result of the training class. When I send people off to boondoggle type training, where it's a week in San Francisco, they may or may not ever take the certification exam. Whereas if someone spends 27 hours of their own time studying for an exam, you better believe they're going to pass it and pass as quickly as possible. It's a win-win situation for them, right? They're more marketable in the marketplace, and then your company becomes eligible for vendor accreditations. Some great examples of training would be the CompTIA program, the A+, Net+, Security+. There are a lot of different cloud managed services and general kind of technical related certifications available to you. So don't underestimate what's available for you for a very, very moderate cost. CompTIA is a great value. All right. Another element of the what we call the right team is that of account management. We call them client IT managers. It's important to realize the distinction there in the sense that we are not technically salespeople that are trying to push product on people. Account managers or client IT managers represent the customer. They are the IT lead for the customer. They have a dual role in sales and service. Their goal is to go deeper and wider into those customers by identifying cross-selling opportunities and having an attitude where we don't really sell anything. We help customers buy things that help their business become more secure, more profitable, more stable, that type of thing. Service can also be a single point of contact where if there's an account escalation, for instance, let's say they called the service department and they didn't get a call back in a few hours, it's nice to know that they have an account manager or an IT manager that they're able to call to escalate issues. It's important, I guess, to realize that at the end of the day, they have an advocate within the managed service provider that's looking out for their best interests, that's not always trying to sell them something. Really important role and something that allows customers to be transitioned from traditional salespeople to more of a customer service, account management kind of mindset. Happy customers buy new products and services and renew contracts, but unhappy customers do not. We had a 97% renewal for our services, and that was a key reason for us to achieve the level of success that we did. Those happy customers not only stay loyal and pay you month after month forever, but they also bring in new customers by referrals and add additional products and services when you recommend them. They know that by looking out for their best interests, it's a win-win situation for them. One thing that's kind of ironic about this is that a lot of the times established customers don't even ask for quotes. They know we never lie, cheat, or take advantage of the trust that our customers place in us, so they simply call and order a PC and a phone, and we make sure it's on site, and then they trust that that bill is going to provide good value to them. It's important. You've heard this many, many times. It's cheaper to replace or to retain a customer than it is to find a new one. Customers long-term are also easier to support. The more you know their environment, the more you know their political environment and technical environment, the higher quality of support you're going to be able to provide. They're going to be happier. They're going to provide more referrals and more references. They're going to stay loyal to you forever. I had customers, and still have customers, that have been with the company for over 7, 8, 10 years. While that may not sound like a lot to you, to some of you, many of you realize that in this business, taking care of a company when technology changes so quickly, taking care of a company can be a challenge to keep up and keep in front of all the things that need. So managed services is a way to really establish a long-term business relationship with them. The bottom line for you is that security equals stability. It's security for your employees, and it's revenue stability for your budget. This is what I call the win-win-win. It's win for the employees of the managed services company because their jobs are more secure. It's win for the managed services company because their revenue is stable. And then it's a win for the client because at the end of the day, if the managed services company or their employees are not stable and they go out of business or resign or that type of thing, it's bad for the end user customers. So retention is good for everybody. Then, of course, it's easier to grow from 200 to 205 when you don't lose a customer. If you don't lose a customer, you have to have 5,000 in revenue. If you do lose a customer, you might have to add 10,000 or even 20,000 in revenue. So it makes sense. You want to make sure that you don't have all of your eggs in new customer baskets. Make sure you take care of your existing customers. On the technical side especially, managed services can be a grueling industry to play in. They learn a lot. They grow quickly. They're very valuable in a short period of time. But it's also, it can be grueling. The reality is it's not always easy for the engineers to maintain that proper work-life balance. So you want to make sure your employees are empowered to make a difference for their customers, try to make it as a fun environment, and you do that through things like paint color. You could do it through great seating, comfortable employees, a good employee, or happy employee. And then the last thing is we try to create events all the time that really just perked up the place. For instance, we had a party the first Friday of every month called First Friday, where we provided food to the entire company, gave them some time off to relax. I also know of some firms that have done what they call Beer 30, which is 5:30 on Friday. They open up a keg and they throw a little party in the office. So whether or not that is in your risk tolerance, I guess, for what you want to provide as a company for liability reasons, it's no doubt a good thing to do for morale. Everyone needs support. Don't forget about the business owner. One of the things that I've realized, and I've gone and given back through these educational sessions and motivational speeches, is that it's lonely at the top. A managed services company is a grueling thing. A lot of times the owners of the companies are also the lead engineers or maybe the lead salesperson. And frankly, they need to take some time off. Don't forget about yourself and your family. Take vacations. Encourage team building for your team, growth outside of work, encourage happy hours and that type of thing. Don't forget about yourself, though. As a business owner, you're not doing anyone a favor by avoiding a vacation for a year. The week that they're without you will hurt, of course, and it'll be slightly difficult on them. But the reality is you, the business owner, and your family will both be happier, and over the long run, your employees will be happier and more loyal because of that. Partnering. It's important for a managed service provider and for any technology company to provide a true solution for their end user. Everyone says that word. Everyone uses that word to describe what it is they do. And everyone says they're not a product company or a specific solution, but they're a big picture solution to their customers. They don't realize that solution is a subjective word. What a customer considers a solution, what a reseller considers a solution might be totally different things. To most customers, anything technical should be done by one customer or one vendor, ideally. And what you want is for the customer to think that and call you first. So it's important to create a portfolio of vendors and partners that you join together to offer customer services. So you can offer telephony, for example, even though you're an IT-only company, or you may provide website development through a partner and provide it internally. It does a couple of things. One, it positions you as a trusted advisor. The customers will call you for anything technical rather than what they know you support. You'll find that increases your revenue stream, increases your perceived value, and really helps the customer appreciate what you're bringing to the table. Customers at the end of the day also want a one-stop shop. They want a solution to all their problems. So if you can bring together an electrician and a phone guy and a web guy and an IT guy and create one bundled solution, maybe even with one bill, you'll find that the customers perceive a lot of value for that. And they appreciate the fact that you're not trying to do everything yourself. Don't hesitate to disclose the fact that you're using a partner to do the work. The reality is quality and support and service are what matters over the long term. So you're better off to outsource to a third party, take a small finder's fee, maybe 10 or 15% of the project, and let the person who specializes in that particular part of the solution do that part of the solution. You'll also find that good partners are created by becoming a good partner. In other words, if you give them leads, they're more apt to give you a lead. If you give them profitable projects, they're more apt to give you profitable projects. It becomes a self-sustaining ecosystem. And one way to do that is to really think through and identify what your core competencies are. One year, as we really grew and grew and grew, we did so by saying yes to really anything customers would ask of us. We would, if they asked us to do something technical, we would do it. We'd hire the talent, we'd get trained, whatever we had to do to get it done. The net result of that is over time we developed 3 different service lines that were not profitable, and frankly, we were not great at them. And what that impacted was our customers in a very negative way, but it also impacted our employees in a negative way because no one enjoys being bad at something. No one enjoys an upset customer. So we took a hard look at our organization and did an analysis on the service line by service line and said, would our customers be better off by allowing another company to do this? Would they be able to do it better, faster, or cheaper than we did? And what I said, the rule was if I could answer yes to 2, in other words, if they could do it better and faster, or better and cheaper, or faster and cheaper, that we would let them do it. We got out of the business, and that resulted in me selling off 3 different service lines of the business, which generated a little bit of income, but more importantly, it allowed us to focus on becoming great at what we were good at. Our customers felt it, our loyalty increased, our profitability increased. It was one of the greatest decisions that we've made. So don't hesitate to do less, but be better at it. It also is really impressive to a customer when you admit what you're not good at. It's so often right now, especially with the economy as kind of challenging as it is in some areas, for a company to not turn down revenue streams. You'll find that it increases customer loyalty and perception of quality when you say, listen, cabling, we could do it, and we'd be happy to if you really require us to, but frankly, you'd be better off if you went to one of our partners that specializes in this market. Bartering. A lot of business owners do it, especially really small businesses. Customers can also be your partners. It creates an opportunity to strengthen your relationships and increases your stickiness. The reality is, if you're an IT provider for someone, they're going to be less apt to fire you if you're using their services as well. The most important thing to do, though, is to avoid drama long term. First, realize that the most successful relationships are those that are well documented. It's important for both sides to know why they got into this, what they intend to get out of it, and what they're going to give in exchange for their services. I like to see invoices and cash go back and forth. In other words, don't just do an off-the-books balance sheet or barter. Go ahead and say, you buy from me, I buy from you. There is absolutely no difference in taxes and which is obviously what people think of when they're trying to avoid expenses by doing barters. What it really does is it keeps it very clear of the value that you're providing. So if you send them a $0 invoice that had, let's say, $10,000 in monthly services, they're going to realize that they got $10,000 in services, when in reality, if you didn't send that invoice, they might not even realize that they're getting that much value. Write it down. The best partnerships can be brought down by a poorly worded agreement. And the closer they are in terms of friendship before you go into the partner relationship, the more important it is to have it documented. You don't want a simple $500 a month or $300 a month barter to create drama or damage a relationship with a long-term friend or a potential business partner. So document them. It's especially important for you to demand documentation when you're in the middle. If you brought in one of your partners and to provide services to one of your customers, you want to make really sure that they document those relationships, because if something goes south, it could reflect poorly on you. CompTIA has a community dedicated to managed services. It's actually one of the more robust and lively communities that CompTIA has. Don't hesitate to reach out to them and join that community. They do a lot of educational sessions and really help each other grow, especially at ChannelCon, which just happened last week in Phoenix. The communities get together, they help each other grow and succeed and share knowledge. Pricing. If there is a confusing thing about managed services is how pricing works. You'll find that there are 3 different ways that people price IT services. 2 are common in the audiovisual and traditional VAR model, and that is billing by the hour or billing by the project. Managed services is a fixed recurring cost. That could be something that you pay for outsourced PC support, for example, could be $60 a month for a certain set of services, or cloud services could be $6 a month or $60 a month, depending on what the services you're providing. But the concept there is a fixed monthly cost. In my opinion, it should always be contractually obligated. So it's $60 a month for the next 5 years, that type of thing. But there's 3 models to consider. Let's dive into each of them. Hourly, it's easy to understand. That's pretty clear, right? You pay $500 an hour. We work 5 hours. That's $2,500. The good part is the more you work, the more you get paid. It's good for you. The less you work, the less you get paid. That's good for the customer. But the bottom line is that the provider, you're not incented to reduce issues and downtime. You're incented to let the least qualified engineer on the project that the customer will tolerate. You're incented to provide the most commonly or most frequently breaking solution that you can come up with. And you're frankly interested in providing a solution that will need to be replaced quicker than it should be. Not that anyone would necessarily do that, but it's important to know that the logic behind a fixed monthly expense. You tend to be reactive rather than proactive because you don't get paid to prevent issues. One way to take hourly to the next level is to consider a recurring scheduled visit. It's one way to transition customers to a managed services model that have previously been on an hourly contract, creating scheduled recurring visits to become more proactive and also keep the revenue stream growing. Fixed cost is the opposite, right? Interests are aligned. The bottom line is customers don't want a cheap IT service company because the real cost of an IT service is the cost of downtime, the cost of failure. You don't want to get into a situation where you've motivated your team or they've motivated your team for problems. That you want them to have no problems. Fewer problems for them means less work for you and expense for you. Less work and expense means you're going to have a more profitable customer. But you're also going to create a partner that's positively incented to reduce downtime and focus on call prevention. The best way I've seen to illustrate this is talking about the cost of downtime. If you ask your customer how long if 1 hour of downtime would cost them, they usually are able to back into a number, either multiplying by their bill rate, by the number of hours that they're down, by the number of employees that they have, or by talking about some sort of a sales metric. If our website went down for an hour, it would cost us $100,000 in sales. Regardless, you'll find that will drastically change the dynamic of the conversation between the two organizations. In other words, it doesn't make sense to pay someone to fix problems. It makes sense to pay someone to prevent problems from occurring. Customers love the fixed cost model, especially people who are on defined budgets like nonprofits or more, let's say, mature businesses. The fixed cost model gives them something they can easily budget for. In terms of fixed cost model, managed services is frequently done on a per month, per device pricing basis. The customer's monthly fees can change as their organization grows, or they can reduce as they shrink. It eliminates some of the fear surrounding long-term contracts. You'll very seldom find a customer who doesn't think they'll be around in 3 years, but they definitely have some insecurity about whether they'll have one person, 20 people, 200 people. A variable contract on a per month or per device basis does that. What I'm seeing a lot of people do though now is move to a more of a user-oriented pricing. In other words, we'll charge you per month per user. Why are people doing that? And that is because of the cloud. The cloud is reducing the number of devices that are at the server and network layer, but it's increasing the number of devices at the consumption layer. In other words, people might have a PC and a tablet and a phone. So it's getting more difficult to bill and manage on a per device basis. But the biggest concern is when you start moving to cloud services, you reduce servers. Servers tend to be where managed service providers make the most profit. You can easily get $300 a month for a server during business hour support instead of $60 on a PC. Well, if that server is replaced by a cloud service, that revenue is gone. So what I like to see is people moving to a per user basis on a monthly basis. They might be billing at $100 a month per end user, including PC and server support. There's also a risk of unlimited liability. What if it takes 40 hours to resolve a single problem? You're going to pay that as a managed service provider. What if you don't have the resources in-house to fix the issue? You might have to pay someone and pay out of pocket. What you do there is to risk mitigation there relates to omitting projects from your fixed cost model. And then some people have an up to clause in their contract. In other words, your contract's for $10,000 a month, up to 1,000 hours, or up to 500 hours, or something like that, up to 100 hours. So you'll see people do that. I frankly believe that the industry is very well baked, that you can accurately anticipate your costs and provide a fixed cost model for everyone to enjoy. Project work is something that occurs no matter what. The reality is you're going to replace PCs when they get old. You're going to replace servers when they fail or get old. You want to make sure that projects are excluded from your fixed cost contract. If you don't, customer will literally give you their iPad and say, listen, make QuickBooks work on the iPad, when in fact QuickBooks isn't designed to work on the iPad. So you want to make sure that you have support contracts for maintenance, but you want to be explicit about what's covered and what's not. Customers hate surprises, and they hate to feel nickeled and dimed. You want to provide discounted hourly rates for uncovered activities and provide larger discounts for larger contracts. The amount of uncovered work can be a great opportunity to upsell to a more robust plan. Very seldom do customers buy your top-of-the-line plan. That's one of the reasons you want to offer multiple plans. I love the idea of 4 plans per customer to pick from. You'll find that customers usually pick Plan 2 or Plan 3 on 4 plans. Well, the reality is at some point they may have an issue that requires after-hours support. Maybe it's not included in their plan. You can use that as an opportunity to upsell them to the next higher level. For project work, I really love fixed bid contracts. The reality is it aligns interest, and it motivates your team to get it done quickly, correctly, and without long-term disruption to the customer's business. You'll also find that your profitability is greatly increased because customers often price shop you for hardware, where they rarely price shop you for services. So you can bid your hardware very aggressively. You can compete with Amazon or CDW and just simply build in the service as part of the fixed bid contract. Build in your profit margin in the services. The same pros and cons apply from hourly versus fixed monthly contracts. In other words, there's a risk that things can go over. You want to build a cushion in there. Because when an engineer, if you say, hey, listen, if you're talking to your engineer, and they'll always tell you how long it should take, not necessarily how long they really expect it to take. In other words, they're not anticipating any of the issues, for instance, slow internet speed, or a customer that won't let them use their PC. Scope creep can kill profitability of the projects. You want to make sure that the scope is very tightly defined in the contract. And don't be afraid to ask for a change order. It's amazing to me how many service people in general are afraid to talk about money. You want to motivate them and inspire them to be comfortable having that conversation. If the project manager is doing her job, his or her job, the need for a change order will be obvious to the client rather than a surprise. The reality is the tighter the scope of work is defined, to say, I understand, it's not part of the original scope of work, and I'll pay as a change order. Once you're in a project, the chance of the customer not doing a change order is very slim because they've established you as a partner, and it's not logical that they would actually go out there and RFP or take a request for proposal for a competitive firm to come in there and help on a project when it's just a real small portion of it. The most profitable managed service providers focus on growth and developing sales and marketing plans around that growth. You want to seek opportunities for your customers that are interested, which would include search engine optimization and marketing. It's no secret that the web is probably the #1 source for inbound leads for pretty much companies of all shapes and sizes. So it would be a good idea for you to consider either offering through internal services or offering through a partnership, search engine optimization and marketing. You could expand your service hours to 24/7. One client that I work with, it's a managed service company out of Atlanta, I'm really encouraging them to start offering 24/7 support. Through a partnership, they can do that at a very, very low monthly fee. But the capability of providing a true 24/7 monitored solution is something that customers are willing to pay for. You can handle larger customers because they have larger expectations. You give the impression that you have a true 24/7, 365 coverage model. It's a very, very powerful thing. And then don't hesitate to expand your service territories. I opened up my second market within probably 24 months and then averaged 1 new market per year thereafter, to the point where we pretty much covered Florida and Georgia. So look outside of your existing service territory. Perhaps you can find a city who's near where you can stretch and have your resources, maybe drive over to support that customer, but you can put a beachhead in there, a salesperson that can go out there and start generating that business. A lot of people tend to, fail to realize that expanding geographically makes you more attractive to customers, but it also makes you a more resilient business because you're not subject to one city's economic fluctuations. It's going to be different in each market, but in Florida, Tampa, the next largest city is only an hour and a half away, and that's Orlando. So we would stretch over to Orlando, send engineers, or at least high-end engineers from Tampa to support that market, but have a local salesperson that's out there beating the streets down to help grow the business. So the reality is we can open up a new office for less than $500 in rent and the salary of 1 salesperson. Build an infrastructure to boost capacity. Build versus buy versus partner. The reality is everything you want to offer in terms of additional services, you face a decision. Do you want to build that with your internal knowledge, internal horsepower? Do you want to buy someone who does that, or you want to partner with someone? Build only when the opportunity is in your core competency. Buy when you can only fully support the solution, and then partner when the opportunity is too costly and or outside your core competency. There is one exception here. When your market is shrinking or you feel less secure about the long-term viability of your business, which is something that I honestly would think for a lot of strictly hardware companies or maybe hardware companies with a minor service component, is that the cloud puts their business at risk. Investing in more of a managed services practice is probably a very, very wise move that can not only add recurring revenue that has 50 to 60% gross profit margins, but it also is a way of mitigating risk associated with your core business going down. So this is something that's really important to not overstretch your bounds unless you absolutely should. Cloud is one of the best examples. Are you really going to be better at providing a cloud service than Rackspace or GoGood? It's amazing how many IT service companies I see building their own cloud infrastructures. And they do that because they assume they could do it cheaper without realizing that there's a lot of resiliency and quality and control built into, for instance, Microsoft Azure or Rackspace or Amazon or GoGrid that is impractical for the average managed services company to own. So while you may be able to do it cheaper, the reality is to do it cheaper, you're probably not going to have the level of security you should. You're probably not going to have the level of resiliency with failover, like redundant hardware and failover services. Another example is hosted exchange. Can you really provide the level of expertise that AppRiver or Office 365 has? Highly unlikely. And then offsite backups. This is those are two of the easiest ways to enter cloud and managed services, and that is to provide an electronic offsite backup, and that's Axion and Data would be your two great examples there. Onboarding in managed services is one of those underestimated but very, very critical tasks. The reality is you want to make sure that that customer is going to be very well cared for by your entire team. You don't want to put all the eggs in the basket of one of your engineers. So you want to make sure there's great onboarding in terms of documentation creation. You want to make sure that you train the customer. This is how you log a ticket. This is what you purchased from us. It's important that they realize what they bought. Then you want them to set expectations up front. This starts with sales, but must be reinforced by the project and account managers. So when they walk in, they make it very clear what the customer bought, what they didn't buy, and maybe even take that opportunity to upsell them if they find that the plan that they purchased is not the one that they should have. You never want to stop educating yourself. Come to sessions like this, and you may be one of those people who gets something off of every slide, and every word is worth its weight in gold, and sometimes you get maybe one small thing out of a presentation or a training. Read books. Focus on developing yourself. One example here is the book called Good to Great. It's a great way for you as a business owner to create a business that's more resilient to economic fluctuations, that has a better foundation to grow, and frankly has a much more positive long-term potential than any small business normally would, because it helps you systematize your business. Another great example is 2 sales books that really help increase your ability to sell managed services and cloud solutions. And that is a book called The Trusted Advisor and one called The Sandler Rules, which is a book that we happen to be featured in our own company. You also want to educate yourself and your team on a regular basis. Don't hesitate to go to conferences. I cannot tell you how much value people got out of the last CompTIA conference. ChannelCon conference put on by CompTIA last week. People were raving about how much they learned. But in managed services, there's other conferences that are what I would say are must-see. Every real managed service provider should invest in 2 different systems. One is called a professional services automation system. The top 2 providers are Autotask and ConnectWise. And then another system that they should have is a professional or a remote monitoring and management system, and that is called CompTIA or LabTech are the 2 biggest providers. Which one of those you pick, it's important to go to that conference. You'd be amazed at the ecosystem that those conferences create. Integrated solutions, pricing discounts, the ability to collaborate with what would be some of might consider competitors in other markets. It's amazing how much you can learn by going to a conference where people use the same systems. You must know more than your customer. You must be able to bring knowledge to them. This is something that we're seeing increasingly in cloud computing. Customers are self-educating. Customers are doing research on their own. You can no longer hide the fact that there are solutions out there that are better, faster, or cheaper for the customer. It's important that you stay up to date on all viable solutions that are proven in the marketplace. But never settle for good. Always strive for great. Always want to get better. There's always a weakest link. There's always something you can get better in. Always strike to improve. The number one thing I'm seeing in managed service providers and resellers here that they need to improve on is their ability to sell and their ability to market. A lot of great companies fail to grow and fail ultimately because they don't sell and they don't market. A company that's not growing is a company that's dying. You've got to invest in sales and marketing. This is something you could always improve on. You want to turn your customers into raving fans. You want them to be out there touting how amazing you are. In summary, your company does not exist without happy customers. They're your lifeblood. Treat them like that. You got to get the right people on the bus, not just the right skill sets, but also with your partners. And you've got to create contracts that are good for your customers and profitable for you. There is no reason in the world to take an unprofitable contract unless there's a very, very clear and defined plan on how that contract will become profitable in the very near future. Every one of you should have a net profit percentage in managed services somewhere between 10 and 30% of revenue. So if your annual sales are $1 million, your end profit should be between $100,000 and $300,000. If you're not there, there's probably an area for your organization that you can invest in to become great. All right. With that, I'll open the floor up to questions about anything we've discussed.
Hey, Terry, this is Mike. I have a question about getting people on board. And you made some points about account management versus sales people. How hard did you find it to motivate the sales team and get them to think about selling services over product? And do you have any tips for that?
Absolutely. It's very common for people to face a challenge here, and that is that especially value-added resellers of audiovisual or computer equipment that are used to selling, for instance, a $50,000 server or a SAN project or an audiovisual system. It's very difficult to get them to think about selling a recurring service because, let's face it, it's not as fun to sell something that's $1,000 a month as it is to sell something that's $50,000. The upfront hit is not as great for them. The answer lies in creating your compensation plan. Make sure you align your interests with theirs. The reality is the business owner has to think long-term because it's not practical to expect the employee to think long-term. And what I mean by that is in a traditional hardware-software model, the commission was a percentage of margin usually, right? So you may give them 15% or 20% of margin on the solution. When in cloud, you need to change your compensation model to be more of a percentage of revenue. So I like to see anywhere from 0.75 to 2 times the recurring monthly revenue was the commission for the salesperson. You'd be amazed how fast they will run and how high they will jump when you say, listen, get this contract signed, I'll give you $2,000, $4,000. You'll change that model really quickly. Now, that does have a cash flow impact to your organization, so you've got to have credit lines established to basically go into debt a little bit, because managed services is a very profitable business. I mentioned 50 to 60 points in net profits are very realistic. You're going to make that money up over time, but you're going to need to front load that commission to get them excited about it. The other thing I'll say is, and this is kind of unsensitive maybe, but sometimes it's difficult to teach people new things. Selling managed services is very much a trust-based sale. It's not a like-based sale. So it's very common for people to not make that transition. So you may invest in them, have them read the Sandler rules, have them read the Trusted Advisor, have them try to move their professional abilities and their careers over to more of a Trusted Advisor type sales model. But the reality is you got to know going in that may not work for everyone. It may not be something that everyone can transition to. So you may have to hire net new salespeople. In fact, the salespeople that I would hire in a managed service provider are materially different than what I would hire in a traditional hardware, software, hourly service kind of model. For instance, an insurance person or an elderly person might be a lot more successful than a very smooth-talking, smooth-looking, traditional salesperson.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Any other questions?
I have a question about what kind of pushback you can expect from customers when you talk to them about hourly versus a fixed monthly cost. And when they say, well, you're providing me good service already, I can just call you and pay you as we go. What are some of those good comebacks that you kind of touched lightly on it, but I think we get a lot of that, especially when you're getting into the smaller businesses.
Absolutely. It's interesting in the sense that you are best able to tell them the answer, yet you're sometimes afraid to tell them. What I mean by that, let's just say that we're not perfect, and that maybe that customer has had an outage of some way, shape, or form. The reality is you got to take that conversation and treat it as though it's only in their customer's best interest. In other words, you're helping them avoid the downtime that they experienced last year. That downtime has cost them a lot more than the incremental cost. You want to remind them of maybe the surprise bill you sent them that increased their average hourly bill. The other thing you want to do is actually go through the exercise of looking at their previous invoices and coming up with an average monthly invoice, because it's often that they may not realize how much they're spending on a monthly basis because they fail to realize all the one-offs. People fail to realize that virus outbreak that happened 6 months ago that cost them $5,000. They don't factor that in. They factor in only what the kind of the normal bill is. So you may educate them by just simply going through your accounts receivable system. The last thing is that unlike a lot of solutions, the future is not as is not as predictable as maybe it is in other areas, in the sense that they may have a server outage tomorrow, and they need to understand that server goes out. They could be down for 2 days, and it could cost them $10,000 in labor to bring it up. So even though they haven't maybe had a really negative surprise in the past, the reality is that they face that risk on a daily basis. The cost of downtime is substantial, and they're taking an additional risk. The last thing I will say is that a great time to make the change is two different times. One is when they're facing a major infrastructure upgrade. For instance, if their Exchange server is outdated, that's a great time to sell an Office 365 deployment. Or if a server is outdated, maybe moving it to the cloud. Another time to do it is when you've had enough. If you're sick of being maybe less profitable than you'd like to be, if you're burnt out and would like a change, it's a great time to kind of hold your guns and say, listen, Mr. Customer, we're making this transition as a company. We believe it's right for our customers. It's right for our business. You don't really say this, but you're kind of in effect telling them to follow you, or you're maybe not a good partner for them. And it's especially important when it's a customer who's either very loyal to you, so you know they're going to make the transition, or maybe one that's not profitable. The key strategy to do with that is to make sure that you never do it quickly. Take your time, do one customer at a time, or 10 at a time, I guess, depending on the size of your organization, to make sure that you don't do something stupid. The final thing is that, like everything in the world, perception is reality. You've got to make sure that they perceive value in what you're presenting. One of the things that I see people do a lot of the time is to skimp on their sales collateral and their marketing collateral. You'll see in the lower right-hand corner that CompTIA, that's a company that's launching here in a couple of weeks. That is literally designed to improve the perception and perceived value of those customers. Your proposal needs to look like it's worth a lot more than the cost you're paying for it. Don't be a cobbler shoe kind of example where you have a really shoddy proposal yet you sell fancy printers, or you don't look very impressive yet you're asking for an impressive monthly fee. Make sure you're managing perception by giving them a proposal and marketing collateral and sales collateral that looks like it's worth the price of admission. I have been dumbfounded in my career to see a reseller ask me why they couldn't get a customer to sign a $5,000 agreement when it looks like something that I would have built in 8th grade on a dot matrix printer. The reality is you got to invest in perception. It's really important to have a professional website, professional marketing collateral, professional proposal, and then make sure that you as a firm look like you're worth more than you're charging. You don't want to dress, if you want to get paid like the average copier repair technician, that's a good start is to look like them. An engineer that wants a premium price should look like they deserve it. They should wear long sleeve button downs with a logo and slacks. They should look professional. They should have themselves together. It's important to take that approach and make sure that you're giving the customer perceived value that exceeds what you're charging them to do it.
All great advice. Looks like we have 2 other questions. One is about mobile devices and how you integrate that into your managed service contracts. Or do you see many people? I guess is a good place to start with that.
Absolutely. Take the mobile thing head on, guys. Do not shy away from mobile. It's I don't know how many of you have heard of a company called Tango PC, but Tango PC is creating a PC that looks exactly like a cell phone. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that the iPhone 7 or 8 probably is going to have a PC integrated into it. It's going to have a hard drive with a substantial capacity. It's going to have the ability to create an mini HDMI out to a big monitor and a keyboard. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that the mobility is where it's at. You've got to incorporate that into your feedback. That's one of the reasons, or your plans. That's one of the reasons I love the fixed cost per user model. If you invest in a good remote monitoring and management tool like a CompTIA or a LabTech, monitoring and managing remote devices is a piece of cake. Another company that's kind of a hidden gem in the managed services space is that it's called FiberLink. They have a product called Mass 360. It was recently purchased by IBM. That is a way for you to instantly have a mobility answer to all of your customers' needs. No-brainer. That product is amazing. The firm's amazing. And frankly, if I was starting a managed service provider today, that would be a critical component to my mobility strategy. So don't shy away from it. Include it in your program. Start charging per user instead of per device. And as a firm, make sure you don't pick a particular platform. Make sure that you have a diversity of Windows phones, Androids, and Apple.
Okay. And then looks like this is the last one. When you do launch this managed services concept, if you're new to this, how would you recommend people measure success? And his follow-up to that question is, what percentage of customers should you expect or should you be striving for to move over? And I know you said pick a batch at a time, but do you have any good measures for success?
Oh, you mean in terms of converting an hourly customer to a managed services customer?
Yeah, I think that's what he's asking.
Okay. Okay, so I think for the audience that we have here, I see two different categories, right? You have existing IT, hourly, and more traditional value-added resellers of technology services. I would expect that conversion rate to be north of 75%. If you invest a sufficient amount in perception, you create a great product, and you're not just selling a new billing solution. In other words, you're not just selling a new payment system, but you're selling a net new offering that's better for the customer. You should expect a conversion rate north of 75%. One of the reasons I like doing it slowly is that if you're wrong, you limit the impact. In other words, if you push customer A to sign over and they don't sign and you lose them, then frankly, you need to go back to the drawing board and figure out why you lost them. On the audiovisual side, a lot of that's going to depend on the perceived, I hate to say quality, but perceived maturity of the audiovisual company. There are audiovisual companies here that have incredibly strong reputations, like I'm sure many on the call have. Those firms can see a conversion ratio anywhere from 10 to 50% of customers to convert over to IT services. Again, it goes back to perceived value, perceived quality, and things like that. An audiovisual person can take, say 10, 25% of their customers and convert them over to managed services and double or even triple the value of their organization if they ever decide to sell it, but also have more reliable income stream and profit stream on which to run their business. So, yeah, it depends on where you're converting from and to, and the level of investment that you make in the quality of the product and the quality of the marketing and sales collateral that you present to the customer.
Great. Okay. Well, I think that's all we have for questions. I really appreciate the presentation. I think for the guys who are getting into the AV systems and even doing residential, there's a lot of things that you could pick up. There's a lot of parallels. And one thing Terry did say that I would recommend is go to some of the IT conferences. I think you'll learn quite a bit and learn that our struggles on both sides are very similar. And ChannelCon was one I was at, I guess, a couple of weeks ago, and that's a great event. They do it once a year. But thanks a lot, Terry. I really appreciate it. Do you have anything you want to end with?
No, I wish you the best of luck, guys. There's a lot of companies out there that are successfully making the transition. It's a much better quality of life for the average business owner, and I would encourage you to take the leap. Don't be afraid. Embrace the change, embrace the opportunity, and reap rewards for yourself and your family for the long term. Good luck.
Great. Thanks, everyone.